and welcome to Geek History Lesson. I am Jason the Postman Inman.
I am Ashley Victoria Robinson. Welcome to your Mind University, because you have stumbled onto the podcast where we take one character, construct, or question from popular culture and teach you everything you need to know about them in about an hour, except this week.
Yeah, why? What's this? What's different about this week?
So, Jason, 1 year ago, we released a GHL Mailbag episode, and after 1 year, we said, nerds to that, let's do it again.
The scariest of Geek History Lesson episodes.
Yes. So we went to our Patreon and our Twitter and our Facebook. No one answered us on Facebook.
What?
Nobody asked us anything on Facebook. How dare.
I guess everybody...
How very dare.
I guess Mark Zuckerberg... Nobody likes Mark Zuckerberg anymore.
Did we ever like him?
We did a while back.
When he was portrayed
We
by,
always liked Tom of
Jesse
MySpace
Eisenberg.
more, but...
Yes, that's true. So we're going to answer some of your questions. Jason's going to make noises while he teases intern Brago, and it's going to be a fun time.
Yeah, the GHL intern cat Brago is in here. So yeah, that's a little bit different. So we got a bunch of questions here. I guess it's a mailbag episode. It could be about anything. Thank you everybody for all the questions. First off, let's just say that.
I also want to say, if we didn't pick your question, it is typically because we have answered it either on a previous mailbag episode or on Instagram Live or on Patreon or as part of a previous discussion. So if we didn't pick your question, it is no judgment or reflection on you, and please ask us questions next time.
We also do edit these for time.
We do. Yeah.
So you got to be the creme of the creme to get on here. Ashley, let's kick it off. Let's get into some questions. Let's get into some answers. Let's get into some mail.
Alrighty. So these first questions are from our Patreon. That is patreon.com/Jawiin, Jawiin, which you know.
We should really quickly just shout out, we talk about the Patreon here a lot of times in a lot of episodes here, but patreon.com/Jawiin, Jawiin, is the way and the heart and the blood of this podcast. Without the Patreon, we've said it several times, Geek History Lesson would have gone away.
Yeah.
And the patrons have saved it. And, we don't just ask you for support over there. We give you more podcasts, like so many podcasts over there. Some of the podcasts you can get over there every single month. Geek History Lesson Extra.
Yep.
Which is more about the topic. So we saved a question this week for the Geek History Lesson Extra because we thought it was so good that we wanted to go crazy about it. Also, there's cussing over there. We have another podcast that also comes out monthly called Jason and Ashley's Excellent Adventures, which Ashley and I get personal about our lives. You talk about some very personal stories. Some recent episodes were Ashley talking about her American citizenship. I talked about my relationship and my love of all the Richard Donner movies. Very personal stories over there. We did a Zodiac episode, which is really great.
The one, here, I'll tease this. The one coming up is about Westerns.
Oh, yeah, my love of Westerns.
Why we love Westerns.
Yeah. And then we do 2 episodes, actually 4 episodes when you count the 2 bonus episodes. We do 4 episodes a month of the Jason and Jeremy John About Justice League, which is myself and my best friend Jeremy Skinner, who you've heard on this podcast before, reviewing every single episode of Justice League, the animated series. And that's a really good time. AKA
Justice Pod, which is a name that you got from our Discord, which you also have access to if you're a patron.
Yeah, so go over, check it out if you're interested. If you like, the tone of these episodes, go check it out. So this is gonna be a fun time over here, and we just wanted to shout that out. Thanks to everybody over there that supports us. All the patrons, you're amazing, and that's why your questions are amazing. That's why we start with your questions. Long diatribe over. Let's start with our very first question from Patreon.
So the first question comes from Tom Traynor, who asks, who are some of your favorite comic artists and which character do you feel are their most iconic? For example, Nicholas Scott and Wonder Woman. Well, Tom, you nailed one right there.
I mean, you definitely nailed the Wonder Woman artist. Ashley.
It's her and Jose Garcia Lopez.
I would also say George Perez.
Yeah.
This is a great question. There are very specific artists that stand out to you when you think about a character. For me, one of them that stands out, and it's only because I can see these action figures in my POV. Jim Lee on X-Men.
Yeah, Jim Lee, X-Men for sure.
Ashley, any that stand out to you? I mean, of course, we talked about our GHL guest. Jan Jurgens is who I think of for Superman. Now there are
John Byrne is definitely another one for Superman.
Well, Superman, the list is
the 80
long.
plus years of history.
Yeah,
really,
it's very long. But when I see Superman, I see Dan Jurgens.
I think of George Perez as well for Teen Titans.
Oh, good choice.
For that OG generation of Teen Titans kids, I think of Tom Grummett for Tim Drake Robin specifically,
good
but
choice.
some Bat Fam
It's a good
stuff.
choice. Mm-hmm. There's some Carl Kessel inking in there.
Yeah, and the Carl Kessel has touched a lot of characters in really iconic ways as well. I would say Darryl Banks for Kyle Green Lantern.
Yep.
And for me, and this is just my preference, I think Liam Sharp is definitely going to break into an iconic portrayal of Hal Jordan, but that's just because the Green Lantern is the only Hal Jordan comic I ever thought did a good job with them.
Mike Waringo for Fantastic Four for me. I know it's a more recent run, but like I love his characters in that. The late great Mike Waringo.
What are some Spidey artists? Because they're
Mark Bagley.
Yeah.
He drew Ultimate Spider-Man. I'll tell you what, based off of his, this is very current to the podcast, his very recent redesign of the Spider-Man costume, Patrick Gleason might become an iconic Spidey. But Patrick Gleason is very, I would say, Superman and the Super Sons.
Yeah.
Let's go.
Can I also just add Todd Knock on Young Justice, but with Impulse specifically? He's my favorite Impulse.
Sure. I'm trying to think about some other people. That's a pretty good list, right?
Sure.
Yeah.
Next question comes from Wake Trafford, who says, also, if we mispronounce your names, I apologize.
Sorry.
Why do you think that there are so little out-of-main continuity Flash stories? Example given, him never getting an Earth 1 story and not having any Black Label or Elseworld stories.
So, Wake Trafford, I reject the basis of your question.
Poor K.
So, what I think he's asking here is he's asking why there aren't, why are there no Flash starring alternate world stories? But there are lots of DC alternate world stories with the Flash in it, including one of the biggest one that we talk about all the time, Flashpoint. Flashpoint, even though it stars a Barry Allen and normal Barry Allen, is technically an Elseworlds. It's technically an alternate reality Flash. But anyways, I went and Googled the full list of Elseworlds, and Elseworlds, if you don't know, is DC Comics alternate reality, whatever storylines. The Flash is in a lot of these. Now, most of these Elseworlds are either Justice League, Batman, or Superman. Same as the animated movies, because DC's got to sell the books. So I think that is maybe Wake's was his question.
Yep.
I think maybe that's what you're touching on here, Wake, is you're touching on the idea that like there aren't many Flash in the title alternate reality stories.
To be fair, though, there is a Teen Titans and a Green Lantern Earth 1. And I mean, Black Label's taken all kinds of characters that are deep bench characters as well.
I will also argue that Earth 1 kind of seems to be a line that has been shuttered at DC. So, and that Flash has been and the Aquaman Earth 1 has been an announcement for a long time.
Yep.
But I'm scrolling through his list, and Flash is in a lot. I mean, Flash is in Gotham by Gaslight. It's not the Flash Gotham by Gaslight.
No, but that's a Batman book story.
He's in JLA the Nail. He's in a bunch of these. I would say that it's because they don't see the Flash as commercially viable. That might change once the movie comes out. You would think that the show would have changed that for a little bit, but apparently it hasn't. I also think another reason for this is because the Flash travels through the multiverse. So, he's generally our Flash in an alternate reality. So, yeah, there you go. That's my answer. Any additions, Ashley?
I would say that there's quite famously a DC executive who really loves the Flash and exercises a lot of editorial control over that character.
He's no longer a DC executive. He's the person I'm thinking about, though.
Well, they are still heavily involved and in the building. Well, not that anyone's in that building, but I think that has something to do with it as well. But that is just hearsay and conjecture on my part. The next question comes from
Inside Baseball.
Hearsay and conjecture. Please don't sue me.
I'll take this one. Grayson Hager says, what is your favorite indie title on the shelves right now? Ashley.
Black Magic from Image Comics.
Yeah, we answer this question on quite a bit.
It's a fair question because indie books, even Image books, do not enjoy the power of a major corporation behind them.
That's fair.
I will also add Kanto. I think Kanto is really fabulous.
I mean, my answer is always the same for this because this book is always being published. Black Hammer by Dark Horse, Jeff Lemire.
There you go. I thought you were going to say Astro City, actually, because you say Astro City.
Astro City is not being published currently.
We used to also say Invincible for a long time, but that's over. Next question, Jason.
Yeah, go ahead.
All right. Noah Dalton asks, what lesson that you each taught was the most eye-opening about a certain character where you learned just as much as the listener? Most of the lessons we teach.
That's very true, I think. I think that's very true.
Is there one that really sticks out for you?
Well, see, I'm... I was hoping you would vamp a little bit longer. It's all good because I'm trying to bring up our list of all our episodes because not one doesn't pop to my head right now. You know where I learn most of our stuff is actually when we talk to like our experts that we bring on. I always feel like I learn the most in the discussions of our episodes than I do in the regular episodes.
I learned a lot recently doing our Poison Ivy episode because I've always really liked Poison Ivy. I've always really thought that she should be a lead and that she should be a more central figure to DC and to Batman specifically. And so getting a chance to dive into her origins and some of her stories and some of the repeating patterns that villains in particular tend to fall into, and then hearing what Patrick Schumacher had to say about her and his adaptation of her, which I'm very fond of. I learned a lot doing that episode, and that was a really fun recent episode for me. That was one that comes to mind immediately when I was reading Noah's questions.
Yeah, I apologize, but yeah, one doesn't really pop to my head right now. I'm certain there are a bunch of them that I didn't know. I kind of agree with Ashley. I kind of feel like every lesson surprises me in some way. Like we try to do a pretty decent amount of research to try to find stuff because we always feel that if we don't know it, then the listeners probably don't know it either. And also, your first audience with a podcast is yourself. And if you're not educating or pleasing yourself, then you're not doing a good job. So that's what we try to do. Like, we really try to be like, well, if I'm surprised by it, then I know Ashley will be surprised by it. And I think Ashley tries to do the same thing. And it just, ping pongs back and forth.
All right. Next question.
Yes. Sorry. I have to bring up the Google Doc. Adam Roberson has a question here. He says, while I know the phrase "don't judge a book by its cover" applies to the idea of never to misjudge people, but when it comes to actual books or comic books specifically, has there ever been a case where you looked at the cover of the story and thought, this is not for you, and when you ended up reading it, you realized that you loved it? Likewise, has the opposite happened when you looked at a gorgeous cover of a story and found that the book itself is not for you? As writers yourselves, how important is it to sell the idea from the get-go as opposed to just discovering it over time?
I don't always ask really good, really thoughtful questions that are not easy to answer.
That's not an easy question to answer, but it's a great question.
Books that you thought were not for you, but you wound up loving it. In a literary sense, I always tell the story about Lord of the Flies. I had to read that in my grade 9 English class, and I didn't want to read it, and it was awesome. It's one of my favorite books of all time.
What was the cover like, though?
It was a really classic cover. I could show it to you. It's homaged in Robin the Lost Years. It's Jack's face. It's a white blonde boy with the war paint, and there's leaves all around it. I will pull it up, and you've seen it. It is the iconic Lord of the Flies cover.
Cool.
In terms of comic books, I would say I read a lot of the Mark Waid and Mike Wieringo Fantastic Four when we were prepping and when we were writing Science, the Elements of Dark Energy. And that was not a book that I was super, super interested in. Fantastic Four, I respect it. I read good stories, but it just doesn't click with me the way it clicks with a lot of other people. But I really like that story and that version of it. And similarly, Matt Fraction's FF about the Future Foundation, I really, really loved. And I was only reading it because it was popular at the time. So anything that comes to mind for you?
Not really. No, I can't really pull anything.
Okay.
Not specifically based on the cover. I'd rather answer Adam's second question, which...
This is the Lord of the Flies cover.
All right, yeah, I've seen that before.
Yeah, it's been homaged a billion times. Right. I will post it on social so
Ashley
people can also know what we're talking about.
I would rather take a little bit of his second question here, was how important is it to sell the idea from the get-go as opposed to just discovering over the time? I kind of feel like in the modern market that the covers don't matter.
Can you elaborate on that?
Well, people don't really browse comic book shops anymore. It's few and far between. I feel like movies, you sort of have to pitch people the idea, or comic retailers have to pitch the idea, or you'll hear about it on social media. But I kind of feel in a lot of cases now that you could put literally anything on that cover, because for a long time, especially the last 20 years, covers have a lot of times not even been anything that's been inside. Like, you'll get a cover image that has nothing to do with what is inside. And it used to always be the idea of like, oh, it was a scene, or it was, now a lot of times it's not even the same artist. Most of the time it's not even the same artist. So I think the cover is less important to selling the book than the idea of the concept of the book or the buzz of the book. And I just think that's the modern market now. Now, I like trying to, as writers, like to try to like make the cover cool because I want to enjoy my cover. I want to make the cover cool. But I don't, it's kind of like movie posters. I don't think movie posters sell movies anymore. Mm-hmm. I think they're cool to look at, and we definitely like movie posters over other movie posters, but like, I don't know if there's anybody sitting at a bus bench anymore that looks at a movie poster and goes, yeah, I'm going to see that movie now.
Yeah, probably not. They go, I might Google that on my phone.
Exactly. And it's what they find on the Google. Mm-hmm. Well, that sounds like such an old man. What they find on the Google. That's what I think it is. But it's very weird. I think in our online marketplace, I don't know if the cover matters, but back in the day, it was so important because it was the thing of the newsstand, and you had to stand out, and But to answer Adam's question, I don't know if I've ever seen a cover and been like, I hate that, and then liked it. I can't think of a specific instance, but I love the question, Adam. I'm sorry. I feel bad that I can't answer it.
All right. Shall we go to the next question?
Sure.
All right. Our next question is from Russ Walker, who says, what characters do you want to do a geek history lesson on, but there aren't enough stories or enough material to make a full lesson?
This one, I feel like I got to pull up our list, Ashley. Our giant list.
Well, this is something so typically the way we do geek history lesson is, in November, I will make a rough schedule for the year based on releases and announcements and things like that.
We generally never follow it, but we get about 50% of it.
It's been a little higher than that when we're not in a pandemic and things aren't moving around all the time.
Very correct.
And then you will go through. We'll go through it together, and you'll nix things, and you will say there's not enough on this. Mm-hmm. And now that I've said that, it's really hard to come up with one, but I know Poison...
M'Baku is one on our list that I just don't think there's any stories at all to talk about. Another thing that's like very similar to this is it's like when people request movie series. Mm-hmm. Like, I think Indiana Jones is a requested GHL, but for me, I'm like, just watch the movies. I don't want to regurgitate the movie or the television show for you. I want you to enjoy the medium. Weirdly, this podcast works a lot better where the character has like 20 years of history. So I guarantee you there's going to be a miniseries or a story that you probably have not read because it's just impossible to read a character's entire history, whereas when a character is only in a TV show or only in a movie, well, just spend the 2 hours or spend the 8 hours or spend the 10 hours, This issue actually does come up quite a bit on our podcast. Like Stargate is a requested podcast right here. Like if we did Stargate, it would have to be like a discussion episode. Mm-hmm. Like there is too much Stargate right now. But
we actually do have a potential Stargate episode.
We do. We have a great guest for that. Also there are certain, and I'm seeing this because it's come up, like somebody has requested the House of L. Mm-hmm. I don't think there's enough material in there. Mm-hmm. Like, I also think because that's the other problem that sometimes we find with this podcast is it's almost too niche. Mm-hmm. It's like too singular that we're just like, where is it? It's hard for us to see like, what's the episode? Mm-hmm. Because there is very special sauce to like what makes our episodes work and stuff like that. It's interesting because I don't know if there's anybody recently that we've come up with that we just can't do or wouldn't have enough to talk about.
Well, when we were doing with the Suicide Squad coming out, mm-hmm. We've already done Harley Quinn.
Yep.
We've already done Suicide Squad, and most of those other characters, particularly with villains, did not have enough to support a full lesson on. Well, so that's why we did the discussion instead.
Well, here's one here. Somebody requested Blink from the X-Men, and I don't know if there's enough on Blink to carry in the whole episode. I will say that I do know the episode that always comes up when we have this conversation is Killer Frost.
Yeah, because she had 2 issues out when we did that episode.
Yeah, and so there was like literally only 2 issues of Killer Frost to pull from. And we had to I mean, Ashley did an excellent job, and she pulled an episode out of that. But yeah, I don't know. Did I answer the question?
Yeah. Our next question is from Cody Enos, who says, how has your relationship with animated shorts like Looney Tunes, Tom and Jerry, Disney changed since you were a kid?
Interesting. Ashley, how would you answer that question?
I don't watch those ones anymore.
Yeah, like we watched a Looney Tunes when HBO Max started because they finally had the entire Looney Tunes. And I think we've been saying for years that it was like kind of surprising that Looney Tunes weren't anywhere, weren't streaming.
Yeah,
that was very weird.
Yeah. Like the only animated shorts that I really engage with now are the Pixar ones, or like every once in a while, or Disney ones, right? Like Paperman, or I watched Wind Up last year when it was it was pushing for Academy Award contention. Like if there's real buzz around it, or like the Spark shorts that are now all up on Disney Plus, but. Animated shorts in particular are not something that's like super, super on my radar right now.
Well, you know, it's interesting. I will say that I think there are certain cartoons, especially certain classic cartoons of the Looney Tunes and of this ilk, that if they're good, they are always good. Like there are certain Looney Tunes. My favorite Looney Tune character is Wile E. Coyote. And I kind of think all the Wile E. Coyotes will always hold up. Like 100%. But I'm not a big Tom and Jerry fan. I never have been. And I will say that I have a feeling, I mean, I didn't like Tom and Jerry when I was a kid, but I have a feeling if I were to watch a lot of those, I'd be like, or you know, that adult noise where you're like, wah, wah, you know, you're just like, okay.
Is there a Looney Tunes cartoon or like gag that stands out to you specifically?
Not a specific, well, the classic gag that I think stands out, of course, is where Wile E. Coyote spends all the time painting the tunnel, and then the Roadrunner goes through it, and then he smacks into it. But actually, it's not a specific gag, but my favorite running joke of the Wile E. Coyote is the fact that he orders from the Acme catalog, and the fact that the Acme catalog will deliver to the middle of the nowhere desert to this coyote. And also, where does he get the money?
My two favorite episodes are, I don't know what they're called, so someone is yelling at their iPhone, are the Bugs Bunny in the Hildy drag singing
That's a great episode.
The Wagner opera.
Yeah.
I love that gag. And then I love the Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde episode with the big fuzzy red creature.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Those are like my two, to me, those are the two most iconic Looney Tunes stories.
Oh.
Those are all of our Patreon questions for this episode. So thank you to all of our super friends over on Patreon.
Yep.
Let's talk about it on Discord. We can keep this conversation going over there.
We do have, again, a question that's going to be on GHL Extra for the Patreon, but we're going to move on to this Twitter question from Kyle McDonald.
Yes.
At Swizard198, who said, with Ashley being formerly Canadian, have you two ever celebrated Thanksgiving twice in 1 year, one in October and the other in November? Now, there is some context behind this. Ashley, we are okay to mention that you have gained your full American citizenship this year, earlier this year. Ashley, I think you specifically wanted to put this question in because you wanted to address something about this.
Yeah. So when I first read this question, I was really hurt and I got really angry. And Kyle McDonald has never been mean or rude or out of pocket in any way on social media to us or in any interaction. So I don't think it's meant this way.
No, I don't think so.
But so I want to sort of address it in this way and say that, like, Kyle, you didn't do anything wrong. This is like a teachable moment for everyone because you're not the only person who thinks this, and it irritates me when people frame it or bring it up this way. So this is me, like, trying to clear the air and teach some people about a reality. So you said formerly Canadian. I am not formerly Canadian. I am now an American citizen. I have retained dual citizenship. I am and will always be Canadian. And that's a really important part of my identity. It's a really important part of like my upbringing and my traditions and who I am. So it really offends me when people think that just because I've embraced a new identity or a new facet of my identity that I had to let that one go. I know this was...
But we should say that we're pretty certain that that was not Kyle's.
It was not. This was absolutely not meant to be offensive, but like that is like my trigger react. Like that's my reaction, how I feel when people say that. And also don't feel bad about thinking this because people I'm related to think this. The day I got my citizen, my aunt texted me 3 crying emojis. She'll never hear this. None of my family listens to this podcast.
It has been astounding. I will say, as an American, it has been astounding the number of people since Ashley has worked so hard and so long for getting this American citizenship, who have asked her this year, who have said, "Oh, so you're not Canadian anymore?"
Yeah,
and even me as a big dumb stupid American, I'm a big dumb stupid American. Even I know about dual citizenship.
Yeah, so when you become, and maybe people don't know
maybe
this. I knew this before I even thought about being an immigrant, but maybe people don't. Unless you move to another country as a refugee or seeking asylum, you can retain your former citizenship.
Yeah.
You literally don't even have to do anything to retain it. You just like live your life because you have like I have a social insurance number in Canada.
At least in America.
Yes, I can only speak for immigrating to America. Because theoretically you are coming from an allied country. So I'm now a dual citizen of both Canada and America. As for Thanksgiving, we have always celebrated 2 Thanksgivings.
Yes.
But for Canadian Thanksgiving, we usually eat better food because Thanksgiving food is bad.
We usually eat American barbecue or something of that ilk.
Yeah.
And then
we did this the first year as a joke, and now it's become a tradition.
I will generally try to find the most Americana 70s or 60s movie I can find, and we will watch it. Like one year, it was Smokey and the Bandit for Canadian Thanksgiving.
Or we watched Cool Hand Luke. One year.
Yeah, it was always like Cannonball Run was one of those movies. Yeah. It's always like a movie like that. But Kyle, I hope we did not offend you at any point like that.
No, and I'm glad that it came up because we couldn't talk about it.
There you go.
So thank you for asking, and it's always okay to learn. That's all.
I have the perfect sound effect for Kyle.
I don't know. The Canadian in me can't stop apologizing, and my American co-host has now killed you.
That sounds about right. Next question from Austin at Austin3000_ said, "This may have been asked before." If it has, Austin, you better watch out. And I apologize for asking it again. Okay, all's forgiven. But would you rather have comic book movies be animated or live action? Now, this, I think, is a great question, Austin. The answer I would have to this is, it depends on the comic book.
Mm-hmm.
Now, it's really great that this year we have a perfect example of this. The Invincible animated series came out on Amazon Prime, and Ashley and I have been saying for years that we thought that show should be animated. And in fact, I think the animated show is so excellent that I kind of just don't want the live action movie now.
Yeah.
But whereas, and I'm going to go right to another Amazon animated or another Amazon show, The Boys definitely should not be animated. I don't think in any respect should be animated. But then you think about, and we're talking about TV shows and he asked about movies. I'm sorry, Austin.
Here,
I'm going to say something about Sweet Tooth. I kind of think Sweet Tooth maybe should have been animated, and I haven't even seen it.
I will say this. I mean, there's pros and cons to both, but arguably the best superhero movie ever made, or one of the ones that should certainly be in contention, is Into the Spider-Verse.
Mm-hmm.
Because it does things that you just literally cannot achieve in live action.
It has a style to it that you cannot achieve in live action.
Yeah.
I mean,
it's also because it's not a hard adaptation.
Other people would also argue Mask of the Phantasm.
Yeah,
which
definitely.
I agree.
For sure.
I agree. It just really depends. Some characters I think can work both, and some comics I think can't. Like, I don't know, like Neil Gaiman's Sandman, a very famous legendary comic book series. I'd be happy for both. I think it could be live action and animated. I think it could work either way. But The Walking Dead, I'm really happy it's live action because I don't know if that works as a cartoon.
I think there's definitely room for both mediums and both types of storytelling. But I wish that the larger consumer market would take animation as seriously as it deserves to be taken, which I also think is something.
We'll get there. I think we'll get there.
It's something that I think like Spider-Verse is helping with. But it's something that we also come across a lot when we do our Studio Ghibli Miyazaki retrospectives.
Oh, you mean the live action to the animated, or
like,
just that studios don't take it seriously?
We're just always like super taken away and impressed with like the artistry of what those movies can achieve. And you can't achieve the same thing in live action. It just cannot be as stylized. But, you know, and there's a lot to be said for animated fights. I think like anime in particular does really great fights. But like, think about like, you know, John Wick versus the Animatrix. Like, they both do action in really interesting and unique ways. And I don't know if either would work in the opposite style.
Well,
like if the Animatrix was a series of shorts, live action shorts, or if John Wick was an anime, would it be the same?
No,
but they both do very similar things.
You are correct on that, but the reason why John Wick works and the reason why John Wick pops is because that is real people and we are amazed. I mean. We are amazed by their skills, whereas the anime is like we are amazed by the art.
Yeah, and like yes, and John Wick also works because it's Keanu doing basically everything, which is an impressive feat in and of itself.
You're breathtaking.
Thank you.
Yeah. Does that answer Austin's question?
I hope so.
Hey, Austin, call in and let us know.
Our number is...
I guess he's okay with it.
213-986-9180.
What is that number? Somebody's going to call that number,
It's actually 213-586. That's a different podcast that we are not on. Don't call it.
Whose number is just here?
Sloppy Seconds with Big Dipper and Meatball. That's their call-in line number. Tell them I sent you. They don't know who I am.
Oh, boy. Let's move on, Ashley.
That's our last question.
It is, because nobody on Facebook gave us any questions.
Mark Zuckerberg hates us.
Sorry. I need that pen back.
Well, I fully don't know where it went.
Oh, I threw a pen, everybody. At myself. And it bounced. Anyways, where are you at, Facebook Geek History Lessons listeners? Where are you at? Or if you're not listening to Facebook, good for you. Anyways, all right, now we're going to move into the last section of our podcast, the honor roll, where if you go over to Apple Podcasts and under our podcast, Geek History Lesson, name of the podcast you're listening to, you give us a 5-star review. We read your review live on the air. And you can write whatever you want. But I will say, I might shoot you through a podcast. No, that's not a real threat. This is not legally binding.
Someone is going to isolate that and you're going to jail.
Sure. The bodies are in New Mexico. Anyways, isolate that if you want. There are no bodies. There are lots of bodies in New Mexico. A lot of people in Tucumcari.
I bet there's a ton of bodies just buried in New Mexico.
Well, yeah. If you go over the course of human history and everybody's buried in the ground, there's a lot of bodies in New Mexico.
Do you know it was only after the 14th century you had to stop burying people in their backyards?
The days.
Good times.
Who misses the plague? I don't. All right, Ashley,
we're living in a plague right now.
Let's get that first 5-star review.
Yes. So the first review is from Unicorn Girl Spit, who says, dynamic duos step into action, and I am not talking about Robin and Batman. Props for putting Robin first.
That's nice.
Wow. I love this podcast. It is the best. Thank you so much. I've learned so much ever since you guys started. Lots of funny parts and cool episodes. Since you started this podcast, I started to love Marvel! Exclamation point.
Cool.
Thank you so much again, Jason and Ashley.
You're welcome.
You have taught me so much.
You're welcome.
I love the Robin episodes the best. Me too, friend.
We do.
Also, I love Best Teen Titans Ever episodes. Yes, me too.
Unicorn Girl Spit. What a name. You're going to get one of these.
Oh, you didn't shoot them?
No, they were lovely. They were so nice.
And they are also joined by Marta Mania, who says, learn a lot, enjoy the show. Love the show. Silly thought but real talk. I'm sorry, my brain couldn't handle that. My partner and I do agree with that review that said Jason does interrupt Ashley too much. Heard y'all read it on the air and was shocked to hear you were surprised about it since it happens quite often. You guys are great to listen to, though, and I love how you let your authentic personality shine through for the good and bad. It makes for a very entertaining show and keeps me coming back for more. I am a long COVID patient and have been very sick since March of 2020.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that.
Can we get a gunshot for a long COVID? That sucks. I'm so sorry.
Well, I'm going to use it to kill the COVID.
That's what I mean. Yeah, that's for the COVID specifically.
And then I'm going to give him some of that.
For recovery.
Yeah. You just got a Dr. Strange spell to help you. I'm sorry to hear that.
So having your podcast to pop on when I'm not feeling well has been a huge comfort. Have also become a Patreon. Woo!
Oh, thank you.
And enjoy the content there. Love you guys and can't wait to see what else you come up with. So Marta Mania and Unicorn Girl Spit, welcome to the Teacher's Lounge. Professor Jason, what's going on in there today?
Well, obviously, we all know, if you've been listening to the 5-star reviews and hearing the gunshots, we know who the guest professor is.
It's Wile E. Coyote.
What He doesn't have a gun.
He has several many guns, in fact.
He has missile launchers, Ashley. There are differences.
I will bet you $1 million Wile E. Coyote has used a gun.
Are you doing it right now? I'm very interested. I think he uses missile launchers. I don't think he uses bazookas.
I bet he has used.
I don't think he's used the gun.
Oh, I don't know how to spell his name apparently. Wile E. Coyote.
It's WILE.
Yeah.
The letter E dot coyote.
There's literally like 10 pictures of him with a shotgun
Show me these pictures with him with a gun. I need to see this. Oh, wow. He has a gun. All right. Wile E. Coyote is a proud gun owner. I did not know this.
He's a Second Amendment's right activist. Boo.
Well, since I am a big believer in the world of yes, it's Professor Wile E. Coyote.
The harpoon gun picture, it's called Ahab Harpoon Gun, which is very funny.
Oh, this episode went off the rails. Professor Wile E. Coyote is welcoming both of you into the Mind University. Thank you so much for leaving us 5 stars. And if you guys want to leave us 5 stars that help support the podcast, go do that over Apple Podcasts. You'll hear your review on the show. Don't forget to subscribe and download this podcast on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify. We are on Spotify. Actually, our Spotify numbers have been going up. So a lot of you guys are listening to us on Spotify, which is really great. And don't forget to follow the podcast on social media. Ashley, where can they do that?
You can do that at geekhistorylesson.com, facebook.com/geekhistorylesson, or on Twitter at GHL Podcast. And just for everyone who is screaming, hey, what about the recommended reading? I will put up some of the things that we mentioned today on our GHL.com/.
It's a mailbag. The wheels are off.
Yeah, everything's wild.
Yeah. Don't forget to follow Ashley on Twitter, Instagram at Ashley V Robinson. And don't forget to follow me on Twitter at Jawiin, at JAWIIN. Thank you so much for listening. Hashtag stick around real quick. Do you like Wile E. Coyote, Ashley?
He's fine.
There you go. Thanks for listening, everybody. This has been a fun episode of Geek History Lesson. We really appreciate you all supporting a mailbag episode. I am Jason Acme Inman.
I am Ashley Victoria Robinson. And Professor Jason, would you please dismiss the class?
Goodbye, everybody. Dismissed. Get out of here.